So is there a role for leaders to play in being role models for future generation apprentices?
Absolutely. And I think actually one of the reasons I like the BAME Apprenticeship Awards is that we should be creating, and we are creating, a number of brilliant role models for others looking to embark on those programs, and apprenticeships generally, where we celebrate apprenticeships at entry level all the way through. So I think the current generation are the role models, young people and adults. But I think leaders could be more active in this space as well. And one of the things that we do, we recruit, I don't know the cohort, but it's a sizable cohort of apprentices every year in our organisation, and every single one of them is buddied with a senior leader in the organisation. So that's about us actively showing our commitment to the programme, but also helping that individual to succeed, and I think sending a signal through the organisation that actually this is a good thing to do, because it gives us many of the things that you spoke about, Dom, in terms of understanding of our client base, new ways of doing things. It's kind of extending the talent pool. So I think the role of leaders is we find the role models who did apprenticeship programs. We nurture the next generation of apprenticeships who are coming through and make sure they're the role models of the future. But also leaders actively support apprentices in their organisations and do that sponsorship and the reverse mentoring as well. Does that answer the question? I hope it does.
Yeah, no, that answers that. That's fantastic. Thank you for that. So I've got a question for Mel. And it's about data. So we've got a question here about if we set targets on data, do we risk them becoming quotas, and where we just reach a target and it becomes a target and that's it?
I mean, yeah, I think we're not, targets and quotas are a little bit different, and we're not allowed to set quotas. So the target is kind of aspirational. For us, I think we talk about the target as a kind of minimum. But yes, I think there is always a problem when it comes to data of people just sort of getting to the number and then thinking, okay, I'm done now and I've ticked the box and I'm out. And I think so alongside, which is why data isn't the answer and targets aren't the answer, because alongside that we advocate for why that diversity is important and kind of how people are treated and all of those kind of things. It makes up like one aspect of everything that we do, but I think it's around the conversation, like Don was talking about, you know, why it's important, especially in a creative landscape, for you to have as many voices around the table as possible. What that looks like, it isn't just about ticking boxes, it isn't just about getting people in at a low level and sort of not allowing them creative control. It's about having that voice throughout the length of your production through all levels, because it makes it more successful as a project, more interesting, and you'll make more money. So I think it's, you know, you have to talk about it alongside all of those other things and not just have it as a number that people kind of hit and then forget about it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So I mean, I've got a question here on data, just on a separate one. If we hit targets, does that mean that we've achieved? So I think what this question is trying to ask is, if we hit a particular target, does that mean that we've done our job? I think there's a question around about it probably being a continuous thing.
Yeah, like I say, I think it's not just about hitting the number and moving on. And I think the thing is what's happened previously is you might have had, so for example, in Sweden, they had 50-50 gender target by 2020, which they hit in the first year when they set it up 2 years ago. And then by the second year, everyone went, oh, brilliant, we've done it. And so it slipped back down again. So I think it is about that, which is why it's really important to keep reporting, to keep the data out there, because it shows you, you know, kind of when you are failing again, or when you've kind of taken your foot off the gas, that you kind of keep having to do everything that you're doing constantly, you know, until we hit this like utopia of everybody being nicely represented and not being discriminated against. And you know, we're going to have to just keep working at this, and diversity is something that you have to keep putting into the conversation. So I think, yeah, it's always a worry, and I think some people do think about targets like that, they do think about data like that. That's not where we're coming from, and what we always do is advocate for kind of keeping up the work. So
No, that's fantastic. We've got a question on okay, here's a really good question. So working in the NHS, and there's a perception that the apprentice is costly and that there's not a fully functional member. So we've got, is there any thought on how we can change the view in times when staff need it quickly? I think it's probably around about the role apprentices play within probably large organizations. I think Cindy, is that one for you probably?
Yeah, I'm happy to pick that up. I mean, I think first of all, I'd say it's really disappointing if apprentices are seen as costly and something that an organisation is just doing. And I know that's not the case, because I know the NHS in particular recruits a number, and they're a really important part.
I think it's probably a general point. Yeah, I think it's a general.
Yeah, and the workforce. I mean, I think there's a couple of things. I think apprentices have to be seen as your workforce. They've got to be seen as meeting a kind of talent need. I think there's got to be a real commitment to their training, but also what they'll bring to your organisation afterwards. And I think that's about having a robust recruitment process, but also a really clear development plan. And you know, I talked about mentors and sponsors, which is also part of that. But I also think then it's about what are the benefits of having these apprentices in your organisation. So I spoke to the guy who headed up the IOD IT forum group at the Institute for Directors. And one of the things he said to me about recruitment was, he said, very rarely it's about most often it's about the attitude. And he said what you can do is teach and support all of the kind of skills. And that's what he wants to do in his organisation, because what you end up with is staff who are then with you for a long time, understand your customer base, understand how you work, and actually it sets your organisation up for success. So there might be a little bit of having to work slightly differently at the beginning in terms of what that development plan looks like, what the structure is, but the benefits you then get from somebody staying with you for 3 years, for 4 years, for 5 years is considerable for your business. So I think it's about looking at the kind of medium long term picture as well as the kind of short term.
That's fantastic. So we've got a question here about do you feel the lack of new level 2 standards has a negative effect on the entry level roles and starting points for students with lower education attainment? I think so. I think Cindy, you touched upon this earlier, didn't you? You briefly touched upon this, and
yeah,
probably got to Dom after this on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing about this is that there clearly is a place for some level 2, because we know that if you look at attainment levels at 16, the number of kids achieving 5 GCSEs and going on to level 3, we know that a significant number don't. So I think that you need some provision in the system that allows young people to get on the ladder and actually progress and have aspirations. I also think there's an important piece for adults, because in a world where industries are continually going to change, and this notion that we might be doing 5 jobs, and actually post-COVID there's been a lot of pivoting of different industries, and digital and food distribution and logistics and all of that sort of stuff. It's also creating a ladder so people can very quickly pivot their careers. So, and that might be at level 3, it might be at level 4, but actually it's just making sure you're creating the ladder of opportunity, I guess, and the ladder of progression.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I was going to say, I was going to sort of use that question, ask a separate question to Dom there. In fact, here's one for Dom actually. Do you think that the introduction of TE levels will support the progression, and career ladder aligned to apprenticeships?
That was well typed, Nicola, who's just put that up there. That was kind of exactly what I was going to respond to the last question, which is that there is a changing landscape in skills. Lots of people may not be aware. Hopefully you're starting to see the adverts, but we have this new T level, a sort of technical level, which is equivalent to an A level, which is going to operate at that kind of level 3, A level kind of space. I think between level 2 and level 3, there is a kind of pathway challenge at the moment to work out how we best recruit people, but also how our education system trains them up. And right now we're trying to introduce those T levels and at the same time we've got a bit of a gap on some of those level 2 apprenticeships. And I think the real challenge is in this changeover period to see which is most useful to our young people coming through the education system. Is it going to be a focus on T levels and looking at level 2 as that pathway, T level pathway, or is it going to be a kind of quick turnaround to try and get more standards in at level 2? I know a lot of us small employers have been lobbying a lot to try and get more level 2s out there, because someone else put in the chat there, it's very frustrating when you go to apply for an apprenticeship and it has a minimum requirement of, say, an A level in maths or a GCSE in maths at a certain grade. And there is flexibility around that right now, but going forward, there are those minimum requirements for the level 3, and not having the level 2 and not being able to support people to achieve their level 2 in maths and English is a real challenge that I mentioned earlier. So I think it is going to be a tricky couple of years while we transition in with the T levels and we see where they fill the gap. They're going to include work placements. So whereas an apprenticeship is like 20% off the job training, as it were, which can be done remotely or digitally as well, it's going to be the reverse for a T level. So it will be sort of 20% on the job. So there is a kind of gap between that 20% on, 20% off, which is going to be interesting to manage over the next couple of years as T levels come in.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think having more level 2s is not just about our young people, as Cindy said. It's about transitioning across, and I think I'm a very big advocate of trying to get some more level 2s out there for sure.
Fantastic. What I'm going to take is one last question, and that's from our colleague Sharon. So she asks, there's a perception that some organizations won't recruit diverse candidates. Even though this isn't the case, how can companies change this perception? Mel?
Yeah, absolutely agreed with all of that. And I think it's about kind of being open, and your values as an institution or as a company. It's your responsibility to make sure that you're putting that out there, that you are open to candidates, and that you are interested in talent, and that doesn't necessarily mean a degree or whatever it is. So I think it's really about your values and your openness to that. And I think there was a question earlier about kind of qualifications being a barrier, and I think we're doing some work in our recruitment around how you give access in your criteria for jobs or for opportunities, that it's I think we've always said 5 GCSEs and up, we've always said or a degree, and I think we're really thinking about how we can ask that question in a different way in order to show openness in our job description and that kind of thing. So it's about knowing that you're looking for other talent and making that clear to people who are looking to work with you.
Thank you. And Dom, just on that point again.
I think lots of people struggle to say, oh, we're advertising, we're promoting, but we're not getting the applications. That is like the most common kind of thing I hear over the years, over the decades. People are a bit more reluctant to say it now, but I think one of the challenges that we have to just get over is being able to talk about diversity, and particularly ethnic diversity in the workplace, because it's something that people find awkward. They're worried about using the wrong words. They're worried about breaking the law inadvertently. They're worried about discrimination. People who are in those underrepresented groups feel additional pressure that they have to over-represent a whole community that they do not represent because they're one individual. So I think there's a whole series of things that we need to start having conversations about in the workplace. And I know this is about taking action, but one of the things that I think every business needs to take action on is having frank conversations about what does your workforce look like? What is their background? What is their level of experience? Do they have GCSEs? Do they have degrees? Did they grow up in the north of England or the south of England? What is it that makes your company diverse? And what is it that you are looking to increase representation from, and why? And I think those conversations are really important and will lead then to people changing their systems and their protocols to suddenly start to say, well, why have we advertised in this place? Why have we called this job the title that we have given it? Why are we not changing those things if they're reaching the same people over and over again? So whether that's a qualification, a job title, where you place the advert, the people that you reach out to, or the people that are doing the recruitment, all of that needs to be discussed and changed. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to increase diversity.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And